Guys, just wanted to do a quick bike check on my Specialized Enduro. It started life as an Enduro comp, the 2018 model. But, after some really great riding, some of it hard, some components have broken and others I just elected to upgrade. So let's talk about what it is when it's stock. This bike is all aluminum, well, mostly aluminum now. The front and rear triangles are aluminum. It comes with 170 millimeters of front and rear travel, with using rock shocks, Yari fork up front, and its Monarch Plus RC3 piggyback shock in the back. It comes stock with 200 millimeter disc rotors in the front and 180 millimeter disc brakes in the back. It's running SRAM guide brake calipers. And that's kind of where things start to diverge. In fact, one other thing, it comes with a SRAM GX 1x11 drivetrain. Now, you might notice as you look at this that it may not look like your typical Enduro comp if you're looking at some of the details. So let's talk about some of the modifications I've made to the bike. Well, right off the bat, I changed the SRAM Guide R levers to the RSC levers so I could have engagement control here. Also, this has much better modulation, and because it's mounted on, these levers are mounted on ball bearings, it's a lot smoother. Makes for really wonderful feel when you're at the bike park moving at like 30 miles an hour down a trail. You don't get any arm pump with that setup, in conjunction with the bigger rotor compared to my Pivot Mach 4 trail bike, which has 180 millimeter discs up front and Shimano brakes. So it's kind of that on-off feel as opposed to a really nice modulated feel on the SRAM setup. Love both bikes, but they have their differences. In terms of the fork, this fork, as I mentioned before, it's a Yari fork, but the RockShox Yari is really upgradable. It basically is a Lyric with an RC dampener as opposed to the RC T3 damper. So what I did is, right off the bat, I added an MRP ramp control to it so that I could tune in the progressive feel of the air spring on this shock. And then I said, bump it, let's turn it into a Lyric. And so I got the Lyric's RC2, RCT3 charger dampener, and that transforms the way the shock behaves. It feels really good on a trail. To be clear, the basic charger dampener is fine if you're running smooth terrain with big hits, as you would on at a bike park. But when you start going to the trail, the more demanding terrain, the better dampener starts to show its worth. So that's the deal up there. Upgraded basically to a Lyric with MRP control and the better dampener up front. I rode snowshoe on this bike, Snowshoe Bike Park in West Virginia, and it was awesome. So I did a lot of drops, a lot of jumping there. And also locally here in Maryland, over at the Rockburn Branch Bike Park, I've been learning how to do jumps a little bit better. All that pounding, I'm a heavy guy, I'm about 200 pounds, 190 pounds or so, about 200. All that weight coming down on my cranks it basically broke loose my race face effect cranks that came stock in this bike. The press fit knuckle on the non-drive side actually broke loose and started getting cranky and creaking and whatnot. So, I was eyeing a 1x12 drivetrain, and so I decided to look at that breakage as an opportunity to upgrade my drivetrain. So now what I have is a SRAM X01 Eagle 1x12 drivetrain with a dub crankset, 28.99 millimeter dub cranks, bottom bracket on this bike. What that means is I have carbon fiber cranks with a 10 to 50 tooth rear cassette, 12-speed rear cassette. The cranks came stock with a 32 tooth front chainring, which is awesome for most of the local trails around here. But at places like Fountainhead, where you can easily cover almost 1,300 feet of ascent, basically due to a lot of punchy climbing, the smaller chainring helps just that much. This bike originally came with 2.6 rubber. I downgraded to, or I shouldn't say downgraded, I reduced the size of the tires to 2.3 for trail riding as opposed to bike park. Also, from just being really aggressive with this, the funny thing about the wide rims that come on this bike, the Roval Traverse wide rims, they're 30 millimeters internal width, is that they really do support the shoulder of the smaller tire. So you can run the tires at lower pressure, but that has a drawback. And the drawback is, should you bottom out the rubber, first of all, you may not feel the fact that you're running lower pressure because there's so much support on the edges of the tire. That's one thing. But should you take a bump or a square edge hit and bottom out the rubber, you may not know it until you really just feel like you hit a brick wall. And that actually happened, where I was running my 2.3 rubber at, I don't know, probably 21 PSI, 23 PSI in the rear, and probably 20 in the front, and it felt great. But when I hit a square edge, I ended up basically not quite tacoing the rear tire, but putting a good, proper, solid flat spot in it. I did not lose air pressure. I was able to make it home, but that wheel was, we decided not to try to recover that wheel. So I took that opportunity and put on some carbon wheels on this bike. So this is now running Roval Traverse SL carbon wheels, which are freaking awesome. They are amazing. They're crisp. They're lighter, etc., etc. I'm a happy camper. I'm still running 2.3 rubber, but I run a little bit more pressure, like 28 PSI to 30 PSI, depending if I'm going to do Fountainhead drops or not. Of course, this bike does come with a dropper. It comes with a 125 millimeter command post dropper. I have not changed that. I don't think I will. I think that's fine. And I was running Specialized boom slang pedals, but the thing is, I like those pedals, but the thing is, if you get a carbon crank with boots, the boom slangs, the inner edge of the boom slangs there isn't a lot of room in there, so it's hard to fit the crank boot caps on. So I had to get away from the boom slangs and put them on another bike, and so I got some DMR Vault pedals instead, and that's the deal. So as it stands, with all the upgrades and whatnot, this bike in a medium 2018 right now weighs in at about 31.1 pounds. That's with 2.3 Butcher and Slaughter grid casing tires. So there's still some room there. If I wanted to get some Maxxis or some Control type tires, I'd probably lose another half a pound in terms of rubber. But I have to thread the needle here, because if I'm really doing a bike park, number one, weight goes out the window, and I'd be running 2.6 grid Butcher front and rear. I'm riding aggressive trails, so there's a good amount of rowdiness in there, and so the Butcher Slaughter grid pair is pretty good and robust, and I haven't flatted with it, knock on wood. If I was trying to pay attention to weight, which I'm not really, then I'd probably go for Controls if I wanted to stick with Specialized, or just go with like an XO casing tire with someone else. But I think you get to the hairy edge of it being diminishing returns. 'Cause really, you get to the point where if you want to lose another half a pound, make a pit stop at the bathroom before you go out. That type of deal. So all in all, this thing is really crazy robust. I have done some insane drops on this bike. Let's call it for an beginner to intermediate rider. Maybe, I don't know, probably, if anyone's ridden Fountainhead Black Loop, drop number 2, I don't want to exaggerate, but I figure it's probably 8 feet from the top of the lip of the drop to the transition landing spot, maybe 8 feet or so. It's at least, Yeah, it's about that, 8 feet. I'd say at least to the top of that plastic bookshelf or so. But it's a transition to flat, so it's okay. But man, what a ride! This thing has really stood up, and I'm really stoked about this rig this summer. Anyway, so that's my Specialized Enduro comp. I guess I can call it an Enduro custom now, I suppose. And it's been a blast to ride. I'm really stoked. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye.